started here in a minute. One of the really cool things about this town is that when we put a meeting together, we get a lot of people that show up. This one, of course, has a topic that's going to probably helps to get people out to find out what we're looking into. But it's something that's really exciting to see how much public is engaged in our government entity, back and forth to see what it is we're doing, how we're handling ourselves with our tax dollars, so on and so forth. So it's really good to see this many people come out for a topic that can have impact in any number of ways. And we all have different opinions on it. But this is a place and a time where we're looking for that. You have 7 board members, and decisions that we have to make, in most cases, we take on the premise that you voted us into that position to make those decisions. This is the type of decision that's very hard for 7 people to make a decision for an entire population, because it's a topic that has a closet to it. We don't know what the public really thinks as a general rule. I can't say how many people I know are in favor one way or another of marijuana, period. And it's one of those decisions that it would be a lot nicer for me to know that we're going to get feedback from our public here in Highland to help our board make the decision that is more right for the community based on what the population feels as opposed to just what the board members feel. A lot of times board members can have their opinions and you can override maybe some common sense, but our board, I think, has done a great job of not letting that happen. So we're going to try and make that, put it out for the public. This is going to be not a short-term thing. This is going to be a long-term thing in terms of we're going to bring out as much information to the public as we can and keep you aware and give you avenues to find out information and keep the doors open and keep this a public thing. So as you came in, you were handed a little piece of paper, and that piece of paper has a space where you can kind of vote on it, or you can write comments on it. The object of that is to get a little bit of a sense coming back to us on the multiple components of this medical marijuana law. And so it's important, if you can, feel free, we'd really like you to fill them in, get them back to us. There's a box in the back, drop them in. You don't have to do it, but it will help overall. The other thing is, if you feel like you'd like to have, if you're not afraid to leave your email address, write your name and email address on there, and we can put you on a list to keep you informed on additional information. So, first thing I'd like to do is, I'd like to thank 59 West and the McDonald family for letting us use this space for free. They're a very generous family, and they have an awesome facility here, and we need to frequent them. And yes, this is an advertisement for them in a roundabout way. Let's give them a hand. This is the kind of thing that normally would cost the taxpayers money to do, and these people have put it up for us so that we don't have to charge for this type of thing. And I think that's an asset to everybody. So Ryan, and is your sister here? Nicole, thank you very much. We appreciate it. So afterwards, if you got some time, wander through and do a nightcap or something on your way out. Why are we here? We're here, like I just described a little earlier, to make sure that we have a good connection with our community and our taxpayers to make the decisions in the direction that you ask us to go, especially on this topic. Got a couple rules of the road. Civility and respect of others and their opinions at all times. In other words, let's keep this as calm and collected as possible. Some people may get wound up. I don't see why you shouldn't. We're just going to have a conversation and an opportunity to ask questions. The other part is if there is any aggressive or inconsiderate behavior, then I'm going to ask you to leave. And we don't need to have that involved in this kind of conversation or in our community for that fact. This is something that's important for everybody, so let's keep it on a good even keel. At this time, I want to introduce Barton Morris. Barton Morris is an attorney that has a lot of knowledge in this medical marijuana law, and we had him speak at our township board in January to give us some background. The information was very valuable in terms of understanding how the law is and what you have to look at in terms of a township and as an individual that may want to be in business as well. So it kind of gives two sides to that picture. So on that, I'm going to turn it over to Barton, and Barton Morris, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. My name is Barton Morris. I'm an attorney in Royal Oak. I have a law firm called the Cannabis Legal Group, as you can see. And I grew up in Oakland County. I live in Oakland County. My office is in Oakland County. And what we do at the law firm is we help businesses get licensed for medical marijuana businesses that we're going to talk about tonight. And I am very, very honored and grateful that I was given the opportunity to come and speak to you about this topic in Highland Township now for the second time. I want to begin by playing this short 1.5 minute video that hopefully you guys can hear.
How you feeling? It's been a rough week, really. And the best way to take it is put it under your tongue and rub it with your cheek. Don't do too much, you're going to be asleep all afternoon. You know what you should do? No, don't try to communicate, just relax. See what happens.
3 minutes later.
I think you're calmed down. So quickly. Isn't that amazing?
He used just a single drop, and his hands afterwards were rock steady, and the dyskinesia left.
Voice is going back. It works most of the time. In fact, it's... Did you guys eat lunch? Are you hungry now? Funny I am, yeah. I should have found
A person like me could really use marijuana. It makes me pretty angry that I can't get out of my home state.
That was an individual that obviously suffers from Parkinson's. And I'm not going to talk about the medical benefits of marijuana all night, but I think it's something that, in case nobody or somebody here doesn't understand, there are significant medical benefits to marijuana. What I'm here talking about tonight is not about the recreational use of marijuana and why marijuana should be able to be used by anybody. But we're talking about the medical benefits of marijuana, and I'd like everybody to know it's my belief, and it's widespread belief, that it's unquestioned. It's so unquestioned that in 2008, the Medical Marijuana Act was enacted because the Michigan voters believed that there's a medical benefit to marijuana, to cannabis. People say marijuana, some people say cannabis. I think that the community and people use the word cannabis as a more acceptable way to talk about it. So I try to use medical cannabis, but I also say marijuana sometimes as well. I want to also talk about my one small personal experience with myself with regard to my mother. She had contracted cancer, colon cancer, and it's I'm sure as many people know, is a very devastating thing. This was in 2008 or 2009. That time, my mother was a physician, and she was completely against the use of cannabis. And I begged her. I said, because later on, towards the end of her life, she wouldn't eat. She would stop eating and wouldn't eat. We would beg her and try to keep her eating. And when you have that type of illness, you just lose your appetite. And that's ultimately, I think, how she died. She couldn't sustain herself. She couldn't feed herself. She had no appetite whatsoever. And as many people probably understand, cannabis, medical marijuana, marijuana in general, will increase your appetite. It can save somebody's life or at least extend it. And that was just a personal experience for me. I never got her to use it. She wouldn't do it. I think at that time, there wasn't the proliferation of marijuana extracts, cannabis extracts. I think if I was able to give my mother, if it was available to me, a cookie or something that she could eat where she didn't have to ingest it and smoke it, that would have been more acceptable to her. But I wasn't suggesting, hey, try this, this marijuana. At the time, all I knew was to smoke it. She was completely against that. It's something that she had been against her entire life, and I completely understand. But I know for a fact that it would have made her life a lot longer had she had she had just tried it. But back then, that was right when the Medical Marijuana Act started in Michigan, and it wasn't something that is like we're having a meeting about it today. So the medical benefits of cannabis are significant, they are unquestioned, and there are multiple qualifying benefits, qualifying diseases by the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and these are just a couple of them. But there's many more. So let's talk about the Medical Marijuana Act. It started in 2008. And it's important to understand at the time, as there are now, there was no system to set up for dispensaries and for commercial grows. The system was this: they created patients where you can register with the state, and you could be a patient, a medical marijuana patient, where a doctor would have to certify an individual with one of those medical illnesses. And then you could register with the medical marijuana program with the state, and then they would give you a card, which would give you the ability to possess up to 2.5 ounces of flower marijuana. It also created a system by which that these patients can obtain the marijuana or cannabis, because there were no, and there are no dispensaries, there are no places for a patient to get it, and so they created caregivers. A caregiver is an individual that's identified by the medical marijuana program as somebody who can grow up to 12 plants for their patient. And so an individual could be a caregiver. That caregiver is not somebody that is a patient, although it could be somebody that is a patient. A caregiver is responsible for growing that 12 plants, up to 12 plants of marijuana, and providing that patient marijuana. 2.5 ounces of marijuana at a time, up to 2.5 ounces. That caregiver has the ability and the responsibility to grow as much as reasonably necessary to ensure an uninterrupted supply of medical cannabis to that patient, so that patient can then continue to use it at a basis upon which that they believe is necessary and that their medical physician believe is necessary in order to treat their medical condition. And that amount is different for every patient. Every patient has different symptoms and different qualified medical illnesses, and so just because it says up to 12 plants or up to 2.5 ounces doesn't mean that's the same for everybody. It can be different. Some persons can use it as needed, and that could be once a week. Others need it every single day, multiple times a day. And so the Medical Marijuana Act, and actually the individuals who drafted this ballot proposal, said up to 12 plants. It doesn't mean that a caregiver has to grow 12 plants or that they should grow 12 plants. It says up to 12 plants. And I think that that's something that needs to be identified and pointed out. The reason being is that because there are caregivers that will grow more than they're supposed to. Because a caregiver can have actually no more than, not just one patient, they can have up to 5 patients. And therefore, if they're a patient themselves, they can grow for 6 patients, 12 plants each, up to 72 plants, which it can be a lot of cannabis to be grown. And as long as that's something that's being distributed to their patients, there's nothing wrong with that. But what can happen, and I'm not trying to make this into an issue for tonight, but what can happen, because I think it's relevant for what we're talking about, is caregivers will grow way too much than what is reasonably necessary for medicine for their patients. And then what happens is they don't use all that medicine for their patients. They ended up then giving it to other people, possibly other patients, and also possibly other people that are not patients. And what that means is there's a black market for marijuana. In fact, a black market has been created by the Medical Marijuana Act in 2008 because there's really no way to govern them. There's no way to limit them. There's nobody there that's looking and seeing whether they've grown too much. And so caregivers, and in fact some caregivers have taken it to the extreme and literally have tried to grow as much as possible so that not so that they can deliver it to their patients registered under the Act, so that they can deliver it to the number of dispensaries that have proliferated in the state of Michigan, primarily, or many of them in Detroit, in the city of Detroit, and in other cities like Ann Arbor and Lansing, where they continue to operate unregulated. And they're unregulated, they don't pay sales tax, the medicine that they're selling has not been tested for safety, and this, by the way, is a big deal. When cannabis is not grown responsibly or properly, it can be unsafe. The very thing that is providing a medical benefit to individuals that are patients registered through the Act is sometimes being taken in unsafe scenarios where when it's being grown and there's levels of mold or mildew or pathogens that are unknown to the individual who has taken it, which is one of the most significant benefits to the new law that we're being introduced right now. That's called the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act of 2016. After many years of legislative working within our Michigan legislature, finally at the end of last year, they finally passed this act, the Michigan Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. And it does what was needed with respect to being a patient having the ability to be distributed marijuana, cannabis, outside of that caregiving model that I was earlier talking about. That caregiving model isn't going away either. It's going to remain the same. But hopefully what does go away is that black market I was telling you about. The incentive for caregivers to grow more than what they're supposed to grow and then distribute it to others that it is not intended for. Other patients or non-patients. So that is going to change. Those caregivers are not going to have that incentive because, as I'm going to explain to you in a second, the dispensaries that are in operation, once they get online with this Facilities Act, they're no longer going to be able to obtain that cannabis from caregivers. They're going to have to obtain it from growers that are licensed through the Act. And so this Act, what does it do? It creates 5 types of licenses. Growers, as I said, and everything's going to be regulated, as I'm going to talk about in a second. Growers will be commercial growers, and these growers will be able to grow at different levels. There could be a 500 plant license, up to 500 plants, up to 1,000 plants, or up to 1,500 plants. So different classes of licenses. A grower will be able to apply for this type of license and have to show the state that they qualify for this type of license. Not just anybody's going to be able to get a 1,500 plant license. The state is going to be very, very strict about giving these licenses, and the state is going to make sure that an individual is qualified before giving these licenses, and the qualifications are significant, which we can talk about that as well. We will talk about. Provisioning centers, which is also otherwise known as dispensaries. That's the second type of license that the state is going to issue. And then there's processing. Processing is a very, very important thing in the cannabis industry. Processing means that the THC, the active cannabinoid, and the active ingredient, and other cannabinoids like CBD and other medical benefiting cannabinoids within the marijuana plant will be extracted from the plant, and then it could be used in a significant number of products, including things that a patient can consume orally, but also topical things too, where they can rub it on their skin and take it, or beverages. There's lip balms. There's literally a multitude of products that could be created with THC extract. There's oils that can be made, solids, and gases. There's vaporizing. So that all happens with a processor. A processor has that responsibility to do that. Because right now, those caregivers, many of them are very responsible. I'm not trying to say that caregiving is a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's in my opinion, it's a great thing, and it's not going to go anywhere. But many of these caregivers had bad intentions, and many of them were engaging in unsafe extraction, because the extraction process can be unsafe. It can create scenarios where butane, I mean, there's butane extraction, and it's flammable. And when it's not done properly, it can be done unsafe and harm individuals, and it has. Fire departments, in fact, I think that the fire department here is even talking about how they frequently will go out to caregivers who are extracting in dangerous scenarios, and they're putting out fires in Highland Township. So the state is going to be licensing these processors, and again, they're not going to license anybody that's not 100% qualified to do it. Then, thankfully, the state is also going to license testing facilities. There are facilities that are dedicated to testing medical cannabis to ensure that it's safe. Not only to ensure that it's safe, but they're going to ensure the percentage of THC that's contained within the cannabis. And so they're going to test it for its potency. For its potency, not only just the THC, but the CBD, which is another type of cannabinoid. It's not active, meaning that there's no pharmacological effect on a patient's body. They don't get high from it, but there are medical benefits to it. And so the state law is going to require that these testing facilities test for the concentrations or the potency of THC and CBD. But not only that, they're going to also have to test for pathogens like salmonella that could be in the cannabis that is grown, molds, mildews, and residual pesticides. Pesticides, it's a crop, it's a plant, and pesticides are generally used. And some pesticides are good, some are organic, some are safe, and there are many that are not, that are bad. And right now, caregivers, most that I know, they don't test their cannabis, nor do they have to test their cannabis. There's no legal obligation for them to test their cannabis when they grow it and then they supply it to their patient. And again, that's not going to change. But what is going to change is that now the state is going to be licensing these 5 licenses, and any individual that gets a license for growing and for a provisioning center, that cannabis is going to be tested. And it is going to be safe. The state is going to set limits for that safety and ensure that all cannabis that is sold is going to be safe. I believe that is the most important and most wonderful thing about regulated cannabis and about what we're doing now in the state of Michigan. And then there's secure transporters. That's the 5th license. And a secure transport license will require, in fact, the regulations that the state is going to set will require that any transportation of marijuana between any of these facilities or any of these licensees shall be done in a secure manner with somebody that has been licensed, with that licensee being tracked the entire time from point A to point B, with their routes being manifested, so everybody knows exactly what is being carried in a secure fashion and where it's going. In fact, the state is going to be tracking every single activity that happens between all of these facilities, including these growers. The growers, when they begin their cultivation process, meaning growing from a clone, each of these clones are going to be tagged, they're going to be known, and they're going to be identified with a number through the state of Michigan, through their marijuana enforcement program or whatever they choose to call it. They're gonna know if it gets destroyed, if it has to be destroyed, or they're gonna know if at some point when it gets harvested. And when it does get harvested, the state is going to know, its tracking software is going to know how much is harvested. And they're gonna know, everything is gonna be labeled, and it's gonna be placed in lots. That it's going to be tracked, it's going to be identified. And then every single piece of cannabis that is going to either go to a processor or eventually to a dispensary is going to first be tested. And so it has to be transferred through these secure transporters, which I think is important as well. Because a lot of people have concerns about crime, for instance, as it relates to these medical marijuana facilities. This is one of the things that the state is going to do, and not just our state, most regulated cannabis states like Colorado, there's 25 or 26 states right now in the United States that have some type of medical marijuana or recreational marijuana program. So this is normal. Their seed to sale tracking is normal. The secure transportation is not necessarily normal. But that's one of the things that the state's going to do is make sure that every transaction is identified, and every movement of cannabis from one place to another is going to be tracked through that secure transportation license. So I'm going to mention some of the strict regulations that are going to be imposed upon the cannabis industry, the cannabis marketplace, and these 5 licensees. Before I forget though, it is a rule, it is a requirement that a secure transporter cannot have an interest in any other license. So somebody that has a dispensary or provisioning center can't also have an interest in a secure transportation, nor can they have an interest in a testing lab facility. So they want to keep these individuals away from each other so that there's no type of collusion. Again, it's another thing that the state is going to do in order to ensure that the program is run the way it's supposed to be run, so that everything is going to be done safely, and that there's not an increase in the black market of marijuana like there has been with the caregiving program. So there'll be strict state regulations, and I talked about seed to sale tracking, and that's what we call it in the industry. From seed, even though oftentimes these growers they don't begin with a seed, they begin with a clone. But from the point of origin of the original basis upon which that this plant begins, it will be tracked and known by the state, and until it's sold to the patient, and only to a patient. Only a patient will be able to purchase cannabis from a medical marijuana facility, a patient registered through the Act. It'll be tracked, they'll be identified through their computer software system as an active patient, because just because somebody gets a card, by the way, a patient card doesn't mean that they're always a patient. That patient card can be revoked at any time. If a physician feels as though that the patient no longer needs cannabis or recommends cannabis to treat that medical condition, that physician can, and I've seen this happen, the physician can revoke that card at any time. And so if that were to happen, then if that patient went to go to a dispensary and had their card, that software that's going to be run by the state is going to stop them and say, this patient is not able to purchase any cannabis because that card has been revoked. Similarly, that patient can only purchase so much at one time. As I said, 2.5 ounces at a time. There's also equivalents for liquids and gases and solids. So it would be 2.5 ounces or of flour, but for every 1 ounce, it also equals 16 ounces of solid form, or 32 ounces of liquid form. And there's another one for gas. So there's going to be strict regulations and strict rules about how much cannabis, medical cannabis, a patient can purchase at one time and over a period of time. They're not going to be able to run into one store, purchase 2.5 ounces, and then go to another city or down the street and purchase from another store. That is all going to be in real time tracked. As I said, the chemical and safety testing is mandatory. Anything that's sold within a medical marijuana provisioning center will be tested and will be labeled. This is important as well. I believe that in Colorado right now, an established regulated market, half of the products that are being sold are flower-based, meaning like just regular, normal marijuana-based, and the other half is through some type of extracted form. And so we're talking about edibles, candies, brownies, breads, liquids, all types of stuff. So what's important is that these things are properly labeled with dosing information. Generally, they are identified with a number of milligrams of cannabis. So it's normal to see like a 10 milligram gummy bear. It's important that the user knows exactly how much cannabis is within these gummy bears or within whatever that product is, so they know how much that they're ingesting, so that they know that they're not ingesting too much, and so they can do it on a repeatable basis over and over and over again. That's a very, very important facet. So, and it helps cannabis users and medical patients to understand this is how much that they normally need of a particular strain or a particular type in order to treat their medical illness or that medical condition. This is not about how much they need to get high in order to have fun, because it's not about recreational cannabis. This is about medical cannabis, and that's what I care about. Security is obviously a big issue that a lot of people probably in this room have. These licensees are going to be held to strict and very stringent security standards in every capacity that you can possibly think of, including video recording. Every licensee is going to have an active internet connection. Why? So that their security and that their video recording equipment that is going to be mandated by the state and is mandated exactly where they have to be is going to be online and accessed by the state 24/7. There's going to be, the state of Michigan is going to have an enforcement division when all they do is ensure compliance. That's all they're going to do is go to each one of these facilities to ensure that they are being held to a very high compliance standard. And I mean very high. I've seen in other regulated states where if a company is not at a really high level of compliance, 98% compliance, they're shut down and they cannot operate. There's businesses that are going to open that their entire business is just compliance. There's going to be there's going to be probably multiple businesses that open in the state of Michigan that provide that service to licensees in order to ensure that the licensee himself or herself or themselves will ensure that they're operating at that level, because being shut down could close their business. So security is going to be it's going to be mandated by the state, but it also can be mandated by the city in which that this license premises opens. And we'll talk about that in a second too. State compliance programs. So before one of these licensees, one of these 5 businesses can get a license, they have to get a license from the city or municipality in which they choose to operate first. Which means that in order for, and this is why we're here today, in order, let's say for instance, if a dispensary wanted to open up in Highland Township, they cannot do it unless the township board passes and enacts an ordinance that licenses them to do so. That's why we're here. Because if the township doesn't do anything, then there will be no dispensaries. Nobody can open up. The township has to do something. That's why they want to hear from you about what do you want. That's why it's really in your hands, and that's why we're very pleased that so many people are here today. So that township or that city or municipality can also set the rules by which that they're going to allow these facilities to operate. So they can limit the number of facilities, and probably should. I think most do. You can have 1, or you can have 5, or you can have a percentage of your population. That is something that is set by that licensing ordinance. Advertising and signage. This is something that will also be regulated by the state, but also should and can be regulated by the municipality as well. If maybe the grows maybe shouldn't have any advertising at all. Or maybe the dispensary shouldn't be allowed to put a marijuana leaf or anything green in their sign. That's a normal regulation, and it's something that the city can do in order to ensure that any facilities that were to operate within their locality is going to do so in a manner that they believe is appropriate. Hours of operation are very common. Obviously, it could be limited to I guess normal hours of operation are usually like 10 o'clock in the morning until the early evening. We want our patients to be able to have access to the cannabis at hours that they need it, that are hours that are reasonable. And so hours of operation are going to be probably primarily set by the municipalities and not necessarily by the state. And of course, zoning. The state, or the state is going to have no say as to where a regulated cannabis provisioning center is going to operate if this township should want one. This township will decide where it's going to be, and the council will decide where it's going to be. And it could say, we don't want it within our main downtown area, or we only want it in this part of town, or that part of town. We only maybe want one on this side of town and one on that side of town. They have to be 5,000 feet away from each other. Whatever the township wants, there's a lot of opportunity to tailor to exactly what the township wants. And that's just not provisioning centers or dispensaries, but we're talking about commercial growers as well. Generally, I know that there's a lot of agricultural land here, obviously, and so commercial growers do like agricultural land. In fact, the state will require commercial growers can only be in agricultural zones or in industrial zones. I'm not sure even how much industrial zones you have here. I know, but I know you have a lot of agricultural, and so you can set the parameters by which that a company will come and open up, like for instance, away from residential zones. There's a lot of fear, by the way, sometimes that I hear about how large grows will then, the smell of cannabis will then get into residential zones. And I can tell you, based upon my knowledge and experience with some of these large grows, that's not generally a concern, because there are methods and ways that we can avoid that. Not me, but that they avoid it through using mitigations techniques through like carbon filters. So these are things that the township can do in order to create whatever type of regulatory environment for regulated cannabis that it chooses. One of the largest reasons why a community may not want a dispensary or one of these licensed facilities within their community because they believe it's going to increase crime. And I'm here to say that that's not true. In fact, there are studies that say, including this one, that it actually decreases crime. This particular study didn't understand exactly why there may be a decrease in crime. Some believe that it's because many cannabis users substitute their use from alcohol, and alcohol being what many believe it adds to crime, and your cannabis users believe there's a reduction in crime. And this study was about not recreational cannabis. This was about medical cannabis, and it concluded that that medical marijuana laws were not found to have a larger or exacerbating effect. On the contrary, they believe that there was a reduction in homicides and assaults, and that marijuana legislation may lead to a reduction in alcohol use due to individuals substituting marijuana for alcohol, given the relationship between alcohol and violent crime. So there are multiple benefits to the community in addition to that. First of all, medical patients want safe access. Medical patients need safe access because the alternative is going to caregivers who may not be growing responsibly and getting it from the black market. Speaking of the black market, there's going to be a reduction of the black market. The black market is, like I said, the caregiving system that we have now there has been a significant increase in the black market, and it's because that a lot of these caregivers have this. They're inspired. They want to grow more so that they can sell it to dispensaries. In fact, they're growing more than 72 plants, and they're selling it to dispensaries. Beginning next year, there will be no more of that. Every dispensary is going to have to be licensed through the state. And as I said, every bit of cannabis that is that is brought through a dispensary will have to be tracked. It will, every sale has to be tracked. There's gonna be standards that are set and inspections that are gonna be set to ensure that there is no black market that is existing right now. I'm not saying it's gonna go away completely, but it's gonna be significantly reduced, and I hope to levels that preceded the Medical Marijuana Act of 2008. There are financial benefits as well to the municipality that chooses to adopt an ordinance and have licensees. The medical marijuana, as I said, the dispensaries that are in operation now, they're not taxing anything. They don't even pay sales tax. They're not collecting sales tax, which to me is just ridiculous because that's the state law. But that's going to change, like I said. Not only are regulated licensees going to pay sales tax, and not only that there's going to be tax, there's going to be a tax between the growers and the processors or to the dispensaries. Then, but as far as the users, the consumers, the patients, they're going to pay a sales tax, a customary 6% sales tax. They're also going to pay a 3% excise tax. That 3% excise tax will then be distributed to pre-identified individuals. A quarter of it will go to the cities, the municipalities that allow for medical marijuana dispensaries within their city. I don't know how much it's going to be because we don't know how many facilities it's going to be. We don't know exactly how much the sales are going to be, but I think that it's reasonable to say, based upon what I know so far, that sales in the first year could exceed $20 million. 3% of that is several $100,000, and that will be distributed, that money will be distributed, a quarter of it will be distributed to the cities that allow for a tax. That obviously will give the city or the township the additional financial benefits to improve their city services. There's going to be a reduction to the black market, and it will increase property values. When and if the city were to regulate or were to pass an ordinance to allow licensed facilities within this municipality, it is going to immediately increase some property values that are identified as like a green zone, meaning that there's going to be places that immediately are saying, yep, I have this property here, if it's within this green zone, it's going to increase in value by probably 30 to 40% immediately. And that includes, the green zone could be, as I said, anywhere where the township believes it to be. I believe that will have a ripple effect upon the adjacent properties as well. And the property values as a whole will go up in the municipality. The Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, meaning the state is going to begin accepting applications on December 15th of this year. In order to be able to accept an application, the city in which the applicant wishes to operate must have an ordinance. And that applicant must have gotten a license from the municipality. So for instance, if this were to happen here before December 15th, and it doesn't have to happen before December 15th, but if it did, and a facility got the license and satisfied all of the requirements, then they could, then and only then can they apply on December 15th. I can tell you, as I said, this is what we do for a living, this is all we do. There are a significant number of cities in the state of Michigan, that are planning right now to enact their programs. There's many others that are waiting. They just want to see. There's others like here that that you're studying it and determining what you want to do. And then there's some that have already voted and said that we're going to enact an ordinance, meaning that they've opted in. There's others that have said that we're definitely not going to, and they've opted out. And that there's no requirement that any municipality do any of those things right now. They can simply just wait. But as far as I know, there are 3 cities that have, well, no, there's one that has actually enacted an ordinance, which is Pinconning. They have said that they will allow, I think, 20 of each of the 5 licenses within their jurisdiction, which is a lot. And I don't have, I didn't have anything to do with it, but I know that that happened there. Niles and Buchanan are we're actually right next to each other in Marion County, which is on the southwest side of the state. They have both passed, they didn't pass, and they didn't act an ordinance, but they passed a resolution saying that they want to and that they're going to. So I can tell you right now that just happened a couple days ago. And when that did happen, immediately property values went up in places where they believe that that there's going to be a green zone. I'll take your questions as soon as I'm almost done. I'll take anybody's questions. As I said, I think there may be one more that I missed. But those are the cities right now that I know that have done something. They've created a legislative initiative. There's been a vote that said that they've wanted it. I know for a fact there are at least 20 that are on the verge of enacting something, or they've already created their language. It's being reviewed by their planning commissions. The planning commission is reviewing it to make recommendations to their city council, and the city council is about to vote. The law has been drafted, at least 20. I've been a part of multiple of them, and I've even written multiple of the ordinances. I've written a couple of them as well. So within the next, I'd say, this is almost April, within the next 3-4 months, I believe at least 20 cities all throughout the state will join these 3. And by December 15th, who knows? There's hundreds of cities in the state, some small, some large. So the last thing I want to get to is this. This is Breckenridge, Colorado. This is a larger map, and this is a smaller one where there are 2 dispensaries in Breckenridge, Colorado. And Breckenridge has a population of 10,000 people, but they do have obviously a lot of visitors. And I was just looking in the state of Colorado, trying to find a city that had the proper size, similar size as Highland Township, but I couldn't find one. But I did run into Breckenridge, which is almost the same size, but just a lot smaller, a lot less people, but a lot more visitors. They have 2 dispensaries there, and this is what one of them looks like, and this is what the other one looks like. I thought I had some more pictures of it. So I can take questions now.
I was just wondering, is there anything in Oakland County or any other townships in Oakland County?
So the question was, are any other townships or cities within Oakland County that are looking at this? And the answer is yes. There are none, as far as I know, I'm quite certain there are none that have enacted anything or even voted on anything. I don't know of any city that has said we're opting out, or if I know of any city that are opting in. But I do know of multiple cities that are in the process of having that consideration. There are multiple cities that have already drafted an ordinance, and that there are others that are in different stages of the process.
I got a blank here.
I was just wondering, who pays for the enforcement of the regulations?
The state will pay for the enforcement of the regulations. Then the state will have a very robust enforcement division that the state will be responsible for. That doesn't stop the municipalities to be able to enforce whatever they choose to enforce as well. Some municipalities are creating their own committee or their own division of individuals that are identified as those that are enforcing what they believe to be important as well. Yes?
Where is all the money coming from to prepare all of this?
She said, where is the money coming from to do what?
Prepare this, to plant and all of that.
The money is coming from individuals, the businesses, I assume that you're talking about. The business that would come here and put $1 million into a facility to grow 1,000 plants. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, do we have to pay for that?
No, you do not have to pay for that. That is done privately. Yes?
Good evening. My name is Randy Rook. I'm the director of the Huron Valley Community Coalition, and it's our mission to reduce substance use in Huron Valley schools amongst the students. And this is kind of the kind of thing that I get a little concerned about because, Neil deGrasse Tyson says science doesn't care what you believe. So some of this discussion about what I think are some dubious scientific things about how they're going to measure potency and stuff like that, and the effects that marijuana has on some medical conditions like pain and that sort of thing. I'm not an expert on that, and so I won't go there, but that's for you folks to think about and talk to as many people as you can. But I do know something about the prevention science, and that when it comes to the young people and their likelihood to use substances, there's some risk factors you have to be concerned about, like availability and the perception of risk. So I think what I'd like people to keep in mind throughout this whole discussion is these unintended consequences. I think that's something that we kind of get lost in along the way. So just remember when the availability is around, just the mere factor of kids seeing the signs in the buildings and that sort of thing, it lowers the level of perception of risk. And then when mom and dad and other family members have the stuff around, the kids are going to be a little less likely to be fearful of it. So, and then it's laying around and it's available. So please consider all that stuff along with all the other aspects that Mr. Morris is presenting. I think there's a lot to talk about here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. And to your knowledge, has anyone ever died from marijuana?
To my knowledge, nobody has ever died from marijuana, and I get that question a lot, and what it illustrates is the fact that nobody can die from marijuana.
The reason I ask that question is just because kids can find so much more worse out there than marijuana. No one's ever, parents need to, I think parents need to talk to their children. I got a 10 and 12-year-old that I've spoken to and educated them so they understand. But at the same time, no one's ever died from this. And we could look at alcohol and every other drug that's legal out there, from pills to opiates to whatever, and millions of people are dying, and all the drug companies and alcohol companies are making all the money. Doesn't make sense. Nobody's dying from this, people, just so we all understand.
Thank you.
First of all, I think you did a great job, Mr. Morris, on your presentation. My question is there someone here tonight that will speak on the opposite end of this, that there might be some precautions that we would like to know about maybe bringing this into our community, what it can do? You're saying property values, but that may be on farmland, but the homeowners' property values, what would that do? Will it bring crime into the area? You said no, but you may get certain elements moving in. Do we have anybody here tonight that will speak on that? You know, some of the cons for, bringing this into our community. And I also wanted to know, like, how did this get brought up to even Highland thinking about this? Where did this start? Yes.
Where this started was, I was requested to go to a meeting. I think it was in Madison Heights or Warren. And that meeting was there was 50 plus city officials from around southeastern Michigan. And what the meeting was about was a marijuana grow facility and this new law. And I went, wow, I know nothing about this. And if I know nothing about it, that means there's a whole bunch of other people that know nothing about it. And my thought was, let's at least start the education process. What is it? What are we going to do with it? How is Highland going to handle it? And we need to educate ourselves. And don't leave it just to your local officials to educate you. It is easy to get on the internet and get information, pro and con. But you asked the perfect thing was, what are the cons? We didn't bring, this wasn't meant to be this guy, that guy thing. What it was is Barton had, as a presentation, I think, brings it from the business perspective. It's obvious. It's also obvious at the state level that it's a business perspective. And what you have to do is you have to look at those opportunities and say, is that something that Highland wants to deal with? And it goes beyond that. And it goes into things that say, are these things that we feel are right or wrong? There's morals, there's all this stuff that's involved in it. The object is, take what you have here, take what you hear from others, get on the internet and start educating yourself. Don't leave it to somebody else to do it for you. And so we're asking, in your process of educating yourself, we are eventually going to ask you to tell us what you think. And that means every registered voter in Highland is going to be asked, what do you think? And that's what it really gets down to. So a lot of people have concerns about this in a lot of different directions. There are people that can see it from the perspective of the dollar. There's people that see it from the perspective of the medication. Mr. Morris knows it from that, from his mother. I know it from my mother, who died from cancer and used cannabinoids to make her end of days better. But does that make it right for everybody? Does that make it right for us to make decisions for you as taxpayers either? No, it doesn't. So it isn't about Rick, and it's not about our other board members. It's about what's the consensus of the community on this thing, and let's find a way to make that clear through a really level-headed formula. And that's going to be asking you questions, just like we did in 2008 at the state level. So I was the one that brought this forward, and I brought it forward because I think we need to know what is it that Highland wants to do, and we need to get educated. So I've been reading like a crazy man on this stuff because I want to know. And I want to know what I need to look for when I have to answer that final question sitting at that board table. Well, what we're going to do, what the game plan is, we're not going to actually have a vote, because that would cost tens of thousands of dollars, but we are going to mail out to the taxpayers basically a ballot, and that ballot's going to have the questions on it, and we're going to send it to every registered voter in Highland Township, and we're going to ask that you send that back as if that's a real ballot, and then we will tabulate all the information on that, and all that information will be given back to the community through the newspapers and on the website. And so everything we do will be tabulated. And everything we do will be put into the papers, on our website, on Facebook, every avenue we have to keep you apprised. So this is going to be something where you will not be left in the dark on this. So, yes, Doug.
I think Lori was getting to, this will not be something the Highland community will be voting on, you, the board, right? So you want our opinion, then you...
Right, you cannot vote on it for us, but your opinion is our vote. And that's the way that our board actually talked this through, and we decided that we don't all feel the same, but we'd feel a lot better if we knew what the public felt. You know, just because you voted for us doesn't mean that, I know there's 30+% of the population here that did not vote for me. I don't know what their opinion is on this, but it may not be what I'm thinking, or it may be what I'm thinking. So I want to hear that, and I want to see where that lays out before I make any decisions.
Excuse me, yeah, I want to know.
Pot is being grown now in this community, so you guys got to realize that if there's no regulation, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. People keep on keeping on doing it.
Hold on.
The state, the township has to do this. If you don't do anything, people still be growing pot without rules and regulations or any guidelines.
What about the caregivers? Is this going to regulate the caregivers?
This will not regulate the caregivers, but it will eliminate a lot of the demand that many of these caregivers will be that are now operating under. They're giving it to dispensaries. That's all going to go away.
Barton, I would like to know, did I understand you correctly when you said that once a community is green, then the residential property values go up 30 to 40%? Is that correct?
No, the green zone. So if a municipality enacts an ordinance and then identifies a particular zone that a facility may operate in, that zone will, the property value will rise, not everything. There will be a ripple effect in my opinion, but the zone is what I was referring to. Being the place that the ordinance allows it.
Okay, we got one here.
Mr. Morris, I have a few questions for you. First question. Did you ever look records, crime records in Colorado?
Did you ever look at the crime records in Colorado?
No, I believe that this study.
The study is not true. I have a few friends living in Colorado that are against approximately crime rate grow up between 28% to 57%. If you will take Connecticut, my nephew is cop and he lives in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He's on duty 12 hours per day. Crime rate rise over 80%. Now, second question I will ask, personal question. Do you want somebody on your property, next to your property, will open growing center, that your property will go up or the property will go down?
The growing centers are generally not near a residential zone. I would not want a growing operation next to my home, and I've never seen that be permissible by a municipality. The municipality generally will keep it at least 1,000 feet away from a residential zone.
Actually, I had 3 comments to make after your presentation, and one is, I took exception with, you were talking about a lot of illegal activity by caregivers, and I would have preferred that you referred to the people that are breaking the law and growing as drug dealers, rather than negative connotations on the term caregiver. Also,
I agree with that.
well, if you could in the future differentiate the terms, because all of your examples that you used with illegal grow, illegal activity, you used the term caregiver and not drug dealer. So that should be a big difference there.
Thank you.
Secondly, all commercial grows are not necessarily safe. You can look at the reputation of Monsanto, which was recently purchased by Bayer. All the GMOs, big commercial growing, whether it be cannabis or vegetables, certainly not corn and soybean. It's not necessarily safer. So what I would like to see is, if this big grow comes to town, it really needs to be organic. And last, my third comment is, from what I understand, any current reputable dispensary tests the cannabis that they buy. It's lab tested before they buy it for their patients. And if they're not doing that, you wouldn't want to go to that dispensary. So it should be clear. First of all, medical marijuana, it's been voted on already, whether you disagree or not disagree. It's really between a patient and their doctor. There's a lot of painkillers out there that have done nothing to help our community. It shouldn't really be discussed whether or not this has medical benefits or not. That's already been voted on. So with that being said, that's my 3 comments for this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one here.
Hi, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question with regards to the caregivers. So if I understand what you said, that the new law does not cover or regulate or change how anything happens with the caregivers. I mean, you just have to count on your local enforcement or whomever to define who's being the drug dealer if they're growing more than what they're supposed to be growing. There's nothing that changed with that.
That's correct.
Why did that happen? I mean, why wouldn't they have put a tighter regulation on those folks?
This particular piece of legislation was very difficult to pass, and it was intended on creating a commercial marketplace. It was not intended on curtailing the caregiving scenario, which is appropriate for another piece of legislation, which actually that is required to be an amendment of the Medical Marijuana Act, because that is where caregivers come from, the Medical Marijuana Act. This is a new act which doesn't have the power to amend the Medical Marijuana Act. Therefore, an entirely new amendment bill must be passed, and it may be very appropriate.
Okay. I got one. Yeah, one more. With regards to the township setting up the green zone, what types of controls would they have to be able to put in place? Can they regulate and approve just one type of facility within the township, within that zone? Or does it have to be all of them that are approved at the same time if they approve a green zone? How does that work?
Are you saying what type of control does the township have in order to control the number of facilities?
Yeah, for the different categories of facilities.
It has every bit of all control. It could allow one, none, three of them, or any number.
On the types or just the number?
Both. So the types, the township could say, we don't want any secured transportation facilities. We only want no grows, or 2 grows, or one provisioning center, or any number of any facility. The township has an exclusive control.
I'm sorry to ask a follow-on. But how do then, I don't know, this is for you to ask. I mean, how do you decide if you say there's 2, how do you decide which 2 people get rid of growth?
I think you uttered it there, highest bidder. I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, I know the answer to that question. Okay. The question was, if the township decided to have 2 grows, then how does the township decide which 2? And the answer is the township will then have its qualifications and then put it out for an opportunity for people to apply, and the township can pick which 2 they want based upon whatever criteria they want.
So that's a request for proposal, I guess is how you put that. Right here.
First off, I'm thinking in our township we really don't truly have that much agricultural land that isn't surrounded by residential, so I'm personally not in favor of big grows in the township, and also the processing. I think there's too many issues with that impacting adjacent property owners and their land values. I am also very interested in dispensaries and the actual zoning regulations that would revolve around them. I have seen they run the gamut from what goes on in communities not too far away where it seems like it's anything goes, a Wild West. You know, they'll have a doctor there on a certain day and you can just go and get a card. And I don't think that's appropriate. I've seen others where you have to have a card and prove that you have one before you can even walk in the door. You buzz and they will let you in if they know who you are, and if they don't, they're there to make sure that you have a card and that you're, it's appropriate for you to enter the facility. And it's very much like a medical clinic, very different atmospheres, and that's the kind of place that I would envision here in Highland, something very, it's medical, so it should be like a clinic, and it should have very strict regulations on it and how it's able to operate.
Thank you.
So I was trying to understand, why would we even want this in our community or even bother? And one of the reasons is, of course, to help people, but then another reason is revenue. And so I understood you can charge a $5,000 licensing fee per year. And then I was trying to understand, you said something, the revenue of these facilities is 3% of it is tax base that then goes out to the communities. Is it the communities that have these facilities in them that receive that
Yes,
part of
there'll
that
be-
3%?
Yes, there'll be a 3% excise tax on all sales, and a
But it
portion
doesn't
of
go
it
to any community, it goes to the
will only go to the
communities
communities with the facilities.
And, right, it's a portion, and a quarter of the 3%. And
A quarter.
do you get more money because you have more facilities?
Yes.
Okay, so there's one benefit for revenue purposes. Also, could you speak to, I don't even, well, you know, I think you answered already. I was gonna say, how did we even get to this place? Why isn't this just regulated through the pharmaceuticals and through the doctor's office, through the pharmacies, like every other prescription drugs?
Pharmaceutical companies are regulated by the federal government, and the federal government will not regulate a Schedule I controlled substance.
Mr. Morris, I attended the first presentation that you made to the board about 5 weeks ago. You mentioned the facility in Warren, and I'm curious as to where the 1,000-foot perimeter is. I don't envision Warren having a lot of open land, maybe industrial, and so you got industrial around it. I'd like to ask you to comment about smells, smokes, olfactory problems, smelling problems associated with the processing, if you have a processing center. I also have a question about Colorado, if they limit transportation to small vans, box vans, 40-foot trucks, or it doesn't matter, it's open season on how big the load is, and whether they use 2 drivers, is it a Brinks truck, or just one guy shows up and makes the delivery on a sealed tag truck? So I've got 2 questions.
To answer your first question with respect to Warren's caregiving ordinance that governs the ability for a caregiver to grow in their industrial zones, they do limit or restrict those facilities to be 1,000 feet away from their residential zones. They do not restrict them from being 1,000 feet away from each other. And so they can be literally right next door to each other, and many of them are. There's large amounts of buildings where there's marijuana grows right next to each other. These aren't regulated grows, regulated by the state. They're caregiving grows. The city of Warren is, I think, likely going to change their ordinance in order to license regulated grows facilities that we're talking about today. But they are 1,000 feet away from residential zones. And it is my experience that these larger facilities do have to, the state is going to mandate that they take precautions in order to reduce or eliminate the odor of cannabis to whatever's reasonable that emits outside of the facility. They're going to have to do that. If they're not able to do that, then they're not going to be able to get a license. And there are ways that this is done in other states. This is a very common issue, especially not necessarily while it's being grown, but my understanding is at the time of harvest is when the odor gets to be the biggest problem. And so that is only at specific specified times. And my guess is, I don't know for certain, but my guess is that at those times there have to be precautions taken in order to ensure that there is no offensive odor to the extent that it's causing to be a nuisance to any adjoining landowner. Your second question was over there. What's that?
I had a question on how it's transported in Colorado.
The second question was about transportation. I'm not familiar with Colorado's ordinance with regard to transportation. I know that here there are going to be precautions, like for instance, dual drivers in a secure vehicle, in a box truck possibly, that is going to be take measures to ensure that it's going to be difficult to break into, because as people may imagine, a truck that was carrying $100,000 worth of product, it can be a target. And so the state knows that, and the state is going, I mean, they created an entire licensee in order to be able to protect it from one licensee to another, a secure transporter that cannot have an interest in any other licensee. One thing that you had mentioned actually that we haven't talked about yet are regulations that are going to be issued by the state. The state is in the process right now of creating these regulations, and they're going to be significant, and they're not out yet. And so all of the details and all the necessities that the state is going to require in order for a licensee to be able to operate, those haven't been written yet, but they're in the process of formulating them and writing them as we speak. Yes.
Are these going to be grown just in open fields or in big buildings?
Yes, if the cannabis plants will be grown in open fields or in big buildings. Again, those regulations haven't been issued yet as far as whether the state's going to allow outdoor grows, and I believe though greenhouse grows are very common in the industry, and they are done in generally agricultural zones. But they're going to ensure that nobody, if there is going to allow like open field growing, nobody's going to be able to see it. Just like now, like as a caregiver cannot grow cannabis outside where anybody's able to see it from a place where they're allowed to stand. So that'll be the same for regulated cannabis as well. And then of course, yes, they'll be in large industrial buildings.
Mine's more just a comment about the school system and our children. Like, I just wanted to counteract. I grew up going to Highland schools. I have lived in Highland my entire life. I graduated Milford in 01. And at any given time, you could walk into that high school and find marijuana. You could ask, 4 out of 5 people you ask are going to be able to tell you where to get it, how to get it, when to get it. I feel like regulating it, putting those signs up and telling our kids, this is medicine. This isn't a joke. This isn't a game. There's license, there's regulations, there's things you have to do. Is a lot safer than having it on every street corner, in every community. I mean, I grew up going here. There wasn't a single person I could talk to that I didn't know that I could find something when I wanted to. And I guess if we went and talked to the kids at the school now, which I have many of friends with their children, they say it's the same way. You know who can get it, you know who where. It's medicine, and we need to treat it that way. But the more we lock it up and put it away in this box and say, hey, don't do that, it's bad, hide it, don't tell our kids about it, put it in the back corner, the more our kids want to do it. At our age, I wanted to go drink because they put it locked up and said, oh, you can't do it until you're 21. When we make it something that's hard for our kids to understand, we don't educate them and teach them this is medical purposes, what is going to happen? They're going to go out and try it anyways because it's something we're hiding from them. It's medicine, and it should be used as medicine. And if that's how it's being portrayed in our community, you have to be licensed, regulated, and taking care of your business. I don't see the problem with it, but I just think that's the counteract that we should look at. Besides, yes, we want our kids not to do drugs. I'm all about that. I'm a mother of 3. But I know that it's going to happen in our school systems. But I want to educate my kids on what the purpose is for it is. Because there's kids also out there raiding their mom and dad's Xanax, their Vicodins, everything else. This is just another medication that is being used improperly. That shouldn't make us have any less, the people that need it, the people that have the license to get it, they shouldn't have to be held back from getting it because some kid might get a hold of it. Because if that's true, I want all the pharmacies taken out of Milford. All the pharmacies taken out of Highland.
All right, thank you. Judy, would you get it up here, and then I have one right here.
I just have like a few of my own opinions that I'd like to state. This is a very personal and something I'm very passionate about. My brother is a quadriplegic due to a car accident where he was the passenger of a drunken driver. His friend was driving. He was in the hospital for a year with spine fusion surgery, the whole 9 yards. Upon release of the hospital, he was prescribed cocktails of narcotics, Oxycontins, Xanax, Vicodins, just cocktails. I was anti-marijuana when this happened, and I was his caregiver for years and would not let him have the medicine, having a young son in my home. I was against the use of it. In time, I came around and let him do it when my son was in school, and I would see the benefits with the appetite, the shakes, everything head to toe. It was night and day for him, and he got off every doctor prescribed narcotic using marijuana. He has been off of them for years now, and it is a different situation. So it is a medicine, and it is a beneficial medicine. As far as allowing it to go into commercial in the township, there are caregivers in Highland already. It is here already. There is a hydroponics store here already. It's here for a reason. It's just about legalizing it here, allowing it here, allowing the taxes and the regulations here. If not here, they're going to go down to Heartland or Wixom or wherever it may be. But it's already here, and it's going to keep progressing to a point where it is like alcohol at some point. So it's just, are you going to be ahead of the curve, or in 5-10 years say, well, I wish we would have, because we would have been in it from the beginning.
Thank you.
I just wanted to address, in high school, marijuana that we were offered there is different than the medical marijuana by virtue of the THC in that marijuana. But you were saying, how do you explain it to your kid? That's the difference. The stuff that you're buying off of the street is to get high. The stuff that's medical is low THC. So they take the cannabis portion of it. Okay, there's a 3-part series on CNN by Dr. Sanjay Gupta called Weed America. It's a great series. Talk about the benefits of medical marijuana. Low THC, what we have, yes. So.
Okay, I don't want to cut you off, but we got a couple other people here that would like to say something.
I just had a question regarding taxing. So I understand that you can, it's up to a $5,000 tax per municipality. It's up to a $5,000 tax for their municipality, but I've also heard from other lawyers that that doesn't include the state, and they can, which hasn't been written yet, or they don't know how much they're going to be taxing for the license, A, B, C, D, one of those 5 licenses. I've heard it's going to be anywhere from quote unquote high. They're expecting to do high, which if you look at the other legalization states that are legalized, is anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000. And what do you expect with that? Because $5,000 is very doable, and when you get large companies like Monsanto that come in and corporatize these huge, mom and pop shops are there, in my opinion. And I'm wondering if it is even going to be feasible for these small mom and pop shops to come in instead of Monsanto or whatever other large company.
The question is, what are the licensing and application fees going to be, and whether those fees are going to be permit smaller companies or only going to allow larger companies to come in? It's a great question. You're right that $5,000 limits for municipalities are going to be implemented to allow license fees, not application fees. So the municipality can charge an additional fee for application, but the annual license fee is up to $5,000. But that, to me, tells me that the state is going to allow reasonable license fees as well. There's not going to be a $100,000 license fee. Colorado license fees range between $6,000 and $15,000. So I believe that that's what the license fees are going to be here. They're not going to be significantly exorbitant, and it's not going to keep a lot of people out of the industry. There's going to be application fees as well. I don't think that they're going to be significant. I think that the application fee for one of these licenses, they may differ between the licenses, but I believe that they're going to be approximately between $7,000 and $10,000, which is not something that is going to keep many people out of the market who want to be.
Yeah, a couple questions for you. First one I have, is it legal federally?
Is it legal? So you're talking about, is cannabis legal federally?
Is medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, any of that legal federally?
Marijuana is a Schedule I controlled substance, which means that it is treated as such, as a substance that is prohibited by federal law.
See, the reason why they came out with the medical marijuana with the caregivers in the first place was to get away from the feds coming in. You're talking about 1,500 plants in a facility. I guarantee you the DEA is going to want to come in and raid that facility every other week just to have a big bust. Now, my next question for you.
Let me just adjust that because I know something about that. The Department of Justice has already stated that they will not interfere in a robust medical marijuana program as long as that program is consistent with their enforcement priorities. Some of them being that medical marijuana is kept out of the hands of minors so that it doesn't have a significant increase in crime or driving fatalities. There's 8 enforcement priorities that have been identified by the Department of Justice. They have already stated that as long as the program is consistent with those, there will be no federal enforcement.
And you actually just led right into my next question. On the security aspect of this, you're talking about cameras, security gates, fences, and stuff like that around the facilities, correct?
Yes.
So who's going to be monitoring this stuff?
The state.
And what's the response time of the sheriff or the state police to get to the facility if it's being broken into or robbed?
We don't know the response times, but this
Okay.
I do know,
And
which
then,
is
what about the police officer in Grand Rapids who went to a legal grow facility that was being broken into illegally that had a 3-inch screw put through his foot?
that was not a regulated cannabis facility. That was a homemade.
But it was a legal grow facility, correct?
No.
It was a legal caregiver.
No, it was that. See, that's not what we're talking about. That's a caregiving facility. I'm talking about a facility that's licensed by the state, and the state, I guarantee, will not allow a booby trap that would have the potential to have a screw go into a police officer's foot.
I was just wondering, is cannabis, is it addictive?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my opinion, yes. I believe it's a physically addictive substance. I believe so.
And it leads to other things.
Okay, we have one here.
I've worked for the Department of Michigan. I was a nurse. I worked at Clinton Valley, mental health. I worked in the Department of Corrections. And I've seen marijuana and I've seen what it's done. It's terrible. And I know that if you make it legal, doctor gives it to Mr. So-and-so, he gets in his car and he's flying low, it can kill. The same way alcohol can kill. I've seen so much abuse. I've seen people lose their minds that are just, they can't even put 2 and 2 together. It starts out slow and progresses. In the state of Michigan, since I'm a retired employee, is very, very poor in what they do. They can't even regulate corrections. Marijuana comes into corrections. Marijuana comes into the mental health. And our lives were at stake. So I know from being a mental health nurse what addictions can do. And this is just another way of letting somebody get addicted.
Thank you. Sir, did you say that the city of Pinconning authorized 100 new businesses?
Yes.
Like a lot of the other facts that you made tonight, I question that. It's a city of 1,400 people. How could they authorize that?
They did. I don't believe it.
20.
Okay, I can show it to you.
20, you say 20?
20, I think, for each facility, though, is what I believe that I read.
That's-
I apologize. I don't know the exact number. I know that they enacted an ordinance. I have a copy of it, which I can look at right now, and I can tell you exactly what they allowed.
I question a lot of the statements that you made tonight.
Fair enough.
That's for him. Rick, is our city that broke where we have to bring this in?
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Is there a kickback?
Right. Yeah.
No. Are you inferring something?
I don't know. I'm just saying. I don't.
Because that's
you could-
offensive.
I'm just saying. You could already smoke and do whatever anyway, and get your card.
We
This
can't.
is just about business, right?
Well, I'll give you a statistic, all right? In 2008, Highland Township voters voted the medical marijuana law in. 68% of the voters voted in favor of it. Now, how am I supposed to make a decision on this issue What's it tell me? 68% of the voters are in favor of it.
Yeah,
So our board could go, now let me finish. Our board could go, have a meeting and say, we want nothing to do with this. But what's more fair is to ask the voters, give them an opportunity to make the statement. There's a lot of statements been made tonight, but we don't know what's the spread, what's the real numbers. Let's give the voters an opportunity. It doesn't have to be through an official, expensive vote. It can be done the same way. Let us look at it. Let's find out. The best way to look at everything is get the information from all sides. We have one person that's presenting something from a business perspective. Business perspective. What else do you think it's about? It's about dollars and cents. The state's in the same shoe. I mean, we got our legislatures up there running around like chickens with their heads cut off trying to figure out what they're going to do maybe with all the money. They don't know. We don't know. But we do know that there's things that are happening across the country that are changing the way people are doing things and thinking. What does Highland think? And that's why we have to ask that question in a broader perspective. These gentlemen are doing the favor of putting forward the perspective of from a business point of view. We need to look at it from all points of view. Is there revenue here for Highland? I don't know. I don't see a whole lot of it personally, but that's not why I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it because I want to know. I want to know what is there. I want to know what it is that we need to be looking at. What is it that my voters are asking me to do? And this is one that I can't honestly just jump up and say, I think everybody wants us to do this. I can't say that. I don't want to say that. And I know it seems a little like I'm pushing it off on you. Yeah, I am. I'm pushing it off on our population. I want to be told this is what we think. But it needs to be done in a way where we get educated. And everybody needs to get educated. You can have your opinions and you can take your side, but we need to get educated. So, yes.
Well, I don't understand what the rush is. Why don't we wait for the next election and everybody can actually honestly vote?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I think the key is it's not a rush. We're not rushing to make this decision. In other words, what we're doing is we're going out there, right? I think what's happening in Highland is most people aren't used to the fact that somebody stands up and says, hey, what do you think of this? It just happens or doesn't happen, and that's the way it's been in the past. Nobody knows what's going on in downtown in the government entity. We're trying to be a different government. We're trying to say we want the public to know what we're doing, what we have to be thinking about, what our responsibility is financially to our constituents, and health, safety, and welfare, the number one responsibilities. So if we don't start and bring it out into the open, how are we going to know that? You know how much time that'll take? A lot. And right now we can't, I'm not going to make a decision because we don't have the rules and regulations from the state yet.
There can't be an election unless there's a ballot initiative, which means that if nobody does a ballot initiative, there won't be an election. So the alternative.
There's going to be an election. Wait for that.
No, I mean, it can't get on your ballot unless somebody goes through the process to put it on your ballot, meaning that there will be no vote. The alternative is to have the council vote on it. So those are two different ways that an ordinance can be enacted. It doesn't have to be through a vote.
So what our proposal is, we will send you a ballot. Treat it as if it's a real ballot, and then we'll treat it with the same respect. And then we'll take that information from there, and we can show everybody what everybody said, and we'll do it that way. Everyone would be serialized, just like a normal ballot.
How do we know that?
Registered voters. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask what's going to be on this ballot? Is it just going to say, are you for or against? Are you going to put any other information on?
We have to go through that whole process, and that'll be put out to the public before it goes out in the ballot, so that you'll have knowledge of it. But it'll be done in confidence.
I just want to say one more thing. In 2008, when people voted on this or made this decision, the information wasn't out there that is out there now. And I have nothing against medical marijuana, but I am a retired psychiatric substance abuse nurse. And I have seen in my 20-some years working in that particular field, the
the impact that marijuana has made on people who suffer from those illnesses, I know I'm going to get a lot of negative reaction by saying that there are gateway drugs, and I know alcohol and marijuana, based on my professional opinion and experience, the people that I assessed, those were the things that they started with that led them to other drugs. And I hate to say this because I don't want to take away any of the benefits from medical marijuana, but I know personally young people who have medical marijuana cards for a bad back or headaches or chronic pain that really make you wonder how they can have that. Now, if it's a medical condition, I got it. I sympathize with it, and I hope that anybody that can benefit from it can use it. But I don't see educating our young people as to marijuana being, medical marijuana being medication is going to change their ideas of using it, because they see other medications that are legal and prescribed, and those are abused too. So, you know, I'm very fearful of what can happen.
Perfect example is you've got an opportunity tonight when you say, why are we moving forward on this? You got an opportunity tonight to say something in front of a bunch of people. So that everybody here got to say something, has had an opportunity. When has this ever happened before? Never. And that's what we have to go forward with trying to do. Let's get it into the public. Let's have more of these conversations, and let's find out where it goes. But we have to get there first. And you need to express your point of view, because I don't know what you know, and you might have told me something, and I go, oh, I didn't know. Everybody can learn from everybody else. That's what it's about. We got, Chuck going.
Just real quick, Rick.
Yeah.
I think it's very prudent for the township board to take this time to start now and to get, especially since the rules and regulations have not been developed by the state yet. I think that's real smart to wait. But I also think that, you know, we do have an election coming up for governor in 2018, right? That the township board can also craft the wording for a proposal and put it on the ballot at that time. So I think I would really suggest that the board explore that option and work with whoever they need to work with to make it happen that way, because then I think you'll get a better, more informed vote, and it'll be official through the whole voting process that way.
Yeah, there's no race here.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think people assume that there's some kind of race. It's a land grab. There's no land grab going here because there's no ordinance. There's nothing. What it is there are people who are interested in investing in a business operation that a lot of people don't like. Those are the questions we have to answer. So it's not a land grab. Doesn't have to happen right now. And we need to look at all of those things. It's 2017, 2018's already only 3/4 away. And we got another year coming up. So till we find out more information about the state laws are going to be, and the regulations and rules, and what else we can do to interact with this, and what kind of information we get back from our population, we're not making, I'm pretty sure, I'll speak for our board as a whole, that we're not going to make that decision until we have the right information. So, Randy,
I forgot to mention, by the way, on behalf of our coalition, we sponsor, if you're looking for more information about youth substance use, at the Church of the Holy Spirit on Harvey Lake Road on May 3rd at 6:30, they're going to put on the same production we did a couple times called Drugs 101, What Parents Want to Know. If you want to figure out this stuff in 2 hours, real quick, the folks from St. Joseph Mercy Hospital will get you right on all the latest information. So that'd be a good idea. And also, if you want to go to our website, www.hvcoalition.org, You'll find a lot of information there, and you can always call our office, and I can get you lots of information about any kind of drug you want to know about, and particularly as it pertains to youth substance use. Thank you.
If they go to Holy Spirit on the 3rd, we have to RSVP because we're going to feed you too. So we need to know how many is going to come. So we don't want to.
I'm just thinking that we have this gentleman up here to give us the information that he has tonight, that perhaps maybe on the other side of that equation, we get maybe a representative, somebody that can give us some information on the negative impacts. So we have facts, not just opinions or someone heard this, someone heard that, just so we have some real factual information to kind of go back and forth with.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes.
I just have one more comment. I know a lot of people are saying the negatives. We have a nurse and another nurse. Do you drink, Rick?
No. Well,
I'm sure,
you
I'm
can
sure
ask
a
my
lot of
friends.
people drink here. But you know what? And when I talk to people on marijuana, I say, "Oh, people who smoke marijuana, they're losers. They're just like alcoholics. There's people who are alcoholics, whatever, they're alcoholics. It's all in moderation. I know attorneys, doctors, business owners. Some business owners right here in Highland who make millions of dollars smoking marijuana. It's in moderation. They're not smoking weed all day, people. They're not getting high all day long. People use it for a lot of different reasons. So yes, there's the people that abuse it, and they're going to smoke it all day long because they have nothing better to do. I understand that. They're out there. I see it every day. And then there's the people that are going to smoke in moderation for whatever purpose, whether it's recreational, whether it's to sleep, whether to get off the opiates, to stop on the Vicodin. I know so many people that quit Vicodins and opiates and smoke marijuana.
But it's just one drug from another.
Absolutely right, and it never killed anybody, like the opiates, the alcohol, the Vicodin, the codeine. I don't know because I've never taken it. Moderation. Marijuana can do bad. No one says it can't, but at the same time, it's in moderation, folks.
Kills the mind.
I have a question directed to the gentleman. So for the state of Michigan, they're changing the law for caregivers. You were saying, does the seed to state and all of those regulations that you were talking about, is that what they're enacting regardless of this? Or is that saying that the caregivers that are here now, if they don't pass this, then there's no regulation as to the detail of what you were talking about? Or does that make sense?
Yes.
Because I can't remember what all of them were, but there was like a list of them. So the caregivers that have, that are licensed through the state right now, will they be more strictly regulated if that is passed here in Highland, or will it change inevitably anyways, regardless of what Highland does?
There's nothing that's going to change with regard to the caregiving program as it exists today with regard to this new law. This new law will create a regulated cannabis industry, and it will only be in Highland Township if the Township of Highland allows for it. Otherwise, it'll be in other cities where those cities have allowed for it.
So it's just more of a strict enforcement than on caregivers in the township.
No enforcement of caregivers, so it doesn't do anything to caregivers.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So for
It's
just
a
the
parallel
grow.
program. There'll be
Okay.
caregivers on one side and regulated commercial markets on the other. They'll both will be operating at the same time.
That's because of the 2008 law that is kind of made the caregivers you're talking about legal, so to speak. And that's why there's a parallel. So until that 2008 law has some changes.
Right. The 2008 Medical Marijuana Act is what established the caregiver system, and that has to be amended in order for there to be a change to the caregiver program. If that's not amended, then it's going to maintain the same. So the Facilities Licensing Act, that's a completely separate act that doesn't do anything but supplement the 2008 law. It doesn't change it in any way.
Okay, just to make this kind of clear that just because if we're gonna do this medical marijuana thing, it's not gonna stop the illegal drug dealing. So I think you were kind of saying how it cuts down crime and it cuts out the black market. that is totally false because they're still going to do it anyway.
It doesn't, you're right, it will not eliminate a black market for marijuana. It will reduce it.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick, you know, I got it now. So where do we go from here? What's the next, you know, what's the township doing next? Is there a meeting coming up and how will we know about that?
Okay, there will be no meeting coming up until we've got some more information out there. So our next step is, we're not going to do any more conversation. I think it's time to kind of cut this off. We've done a good job of it. We've got some boards up there we're going to ask some questions about. We're going to leave that alone tonight. We're not going to go on that part. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those items or those little sheets that we asked you to put your little vote on, put them in the box, and we're going to go through and we're going to tally up what we get tonight. You'll be able to see that on our website. You'll be able to see it on, we'll put it out on our, Highland has a new Facebook site. We also will get it into the newspaper, and you'll be able to see what came out of this meeting. And then the next steps, we will keep you posted in advance, so you know if there's going to be more meetings, or what we've learned, or how we're going to go about doing some stuff. So this is cutting edge stuff for us to do. I mean, it's nerve-wracking, and we want to do the right thing. And that right thing takes a lot of people expressing their desire for tell us what to do. So, yes, ma'am. Okay, the question is, what do we have the map up there for? That purple thing in the middle, that's how much land we have for industrial. Then the real dark green stuff, that would be like probably agricultural areas that would be potentially available. But you have to get into looking really closely at these things. We brought it in case people were curious about where those areas were. But once again, as you heard, it's up to the township to decide where would we want that to happen, if we want it to happen. So we'll have to get into that at a later point. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. That's pretty much where industrial is already zoned. No, there's no proposal on any of that, no. That is our current consolidated master plan, so anybody could see that at the town hall and know what your properties are planned for. It has nothing to do with marijuana, so. Okay, one more question.
Your presentation, the provision centers, the type of marijuana that would be available, it made it sound like there wouldn't be any smokable marijuana. It would all be like in the form of gummy bears or pills or liquids, or is that true? There wouldn't be like smokable type of marijuana?
The township could limit it to whatever it wanted. So it depends on what the municipality would allow, but generally and typically a provisioning center would have all forms, including smokable and usable marijuana that can be ingested in other ways, like through edibles or through eating it or consuming it in another fashion.
Okay. And then my second question would kind of piggyback on the lady in front. Is there, in the new act here, is there going to be requirements for who can prescribe a person like this? Because it seems like what you showed on the video was a person doing it as a last resort. I guess my concern is a lot of people doing it as a first resort, such as glaucoma. Who would say that somebody should go on marijuana to treat their glaucoma instead of
Any licensed physician in Michigan can authorize the use of medical marijuana that would qualify a patient to receive a card.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, Rick, I just want to
Yep.
ask you a question. Is there
Sure.
any way we can get some information from Colorado about their crime? Has it risen? Has it gone down? I mean, just to give us something more of what will happen to Highland.
You have access to the internet?
I sure do.
It doesn't take
It doesn't,
10 seconds.
I cannot find anything on crime.
Well,
I
yeah.
cannot find anything on crime whatsoever.
Well, we'll see what we can get.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that what we need to do is, I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. This is one of those things that I think our township has not been used to. And I hope that we can have more meetings that talk about other things that help bring us forward. And anybody that has any questions, please ask. You know, don't get out there in social media and talk about it in a way that doesn't help in the long run. Let the board go through the process that we've kind of talked about, so that we can get a really good, honest feel from our population about what we're going to do. And we will do it in a way that is transparent and upstanding, not half-handed. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming out.